secure MPC from fixed key block ciphers.
Which one is working? Right. Okay. It's fine. I will use keyboard. I don't want to do the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So hi, I'm Xiao. I'm currently at Boston University and MIT as a postdoc. I will join Northwestern in a few months as an assistant professor. So today I'm going to talk about efficient and secure multi-party computation from fixed key block ciphers. So we have fixed key block ciphers in the title. Probably everybody will wonder okay, so probably the main topic of this talk is going to be about efficiency. But actually no. So our focus is security. While everybody is trying to optimize using different kind of tricks and heuristics, so our main focus is actually taking a step back and see what's the implication of all these kind of heuristic and optimizations and how to make them actually secure. To give everybody some more ideas, let me first partition the work of MPC into a few layers. Well, at the topmost layer is applications where we build different kind of practical systems for different kind of use, and then in the lower level is some kind of protocol and building blocks. Let's say we have garbling, we have oblivious transfer, we have secret sharing space kind of protocol, we have all different kind of stuff that are listed here. And then one layer below this some kind of lower level stuff assumptions, models, some symmetric key primitives that we need to build all this kind of fancy stuff. And then at the very bottom layer is the implementation, where we need to choose a way to instantiate all these kind of primitives, which will be used to build the next layer, which will be used to build the applications. So over here, we mainly focus on symmetric key primitives with the interplay between protocols and symmetric key primitives, and the interplay of how these symmetric key primitives are actually done in practice in the implementation. So let me first give some overview. So again, MPC, it's moving very, very fast from theory to practice. A lot of startups, a lot of money, and everybody is trying to build something that can work, that can perform, that can run efficiently, and as every cryptographer said, don't rule your own crypto. But in practice, when we build MPC protocols, in many times we actually rule our own crypto to make it efficient. So there's actually a gap. Let's say when we write a paper, we say that okay, so blah 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 is going to be let's say random oracle, and then in practice, how it is instantiated is another story. Sometimes it's just it's going to be ignored in the paper. I thought you has a question. Okay. Sometimes it's usually ignored in the paper, and in the implementation, it's really some ad hoc choice on based on the performance. Let's say what kind of let's say instantiation is going to give us the best performance, and that part is usually not proven. So it's actually a very big problem, and we mostly focus in this work on hash functions used in various parts of the protocol. We want to ask questions what properties that are actually needed for this kind of hash functions, how they are implemented in existing implementations, whether they are secure, and is there any way to get better efficiency to do them. So one of the most impacted way of building some kind of conceptually hash function is based on fixed key block ciphers. This get widely known to the applied crypto community, mostly because of the Just Garble by Blair et al. 6 years ago in Oakland 13. So they actually propose that we can actually build they propose that we can build a garbling scheme based on fixed key block cipher with securely. The main motivation is that the fixed key block cipher is much more efficient than, let's say, a hash function call. It's probably it's not very easy to convince everybody without showing the numbers. So let me first show some numbers on some existing building blocks that and the performance. So over here, so we have the performance for different hash functions, AES with the key scheduling, fixed key AES, and XORP. XORP is a recent work that that shows that if you have two random permutation and you XOR them, that's a random oracle of the same size. So all the numbers are shown, and this XORP is instantiated using two fixed key AES. So the numbers shown over here are in terms of number of CPU cycles, and because like many of these implementations will benefit from pipelining, so I also show the performance in terms of batch size. We can see, let's see, if we want to call some of them, like in batch of 8, actually AES is kind of it's like 50 times faster than SHA-256. For example, if we take AES and SHA-256, AES has 10 rounds. So in the AES 128 has 10 rounds. So in the best case, I can expect a latency of 10, in some sense.
Hardware for MPC purposes, would things look different, or would it still?
I feel like fixed key AES is kind of close to the dream stuff, yeah. Because like I mean, using SHA-256 is kind of an overkill anyway.
Yeah, but I guess if you're pointing to fixed key AES, something of comparable efficiency, that is.
I wouldn't say fixed key AES is not always. Some use of fixed key AES is always not safe. If you use fixed key AES properly, it's actually safe.
But something that would make it get things wrong and yet.
I see. But I see. I mean, but yeah, but like in terms of whether there will be any other stuff, that's like a hardcore like a symmetric key question, I would say. I'm not.
It's a great general question. If you hardware to be ideal for governing for
Skylake does not. SHA-256. So actually, so I actually look at the CPU flags and all the stuff. So SHA-256 only Xiao Wang has hardware acceleration, and it only available on low-end CPU in Intel, not a high-end CPU for some reason. Actually, I also found a paper where they actually benchmarked the SHA-NI, and the performance is like 3 times better than what's being reported over here. Because like it need. Yeah, hardware implementation of AES is still better than it's still much better, at least 10 times better than hardware implementation of SHA-NI. Yeah. And mostly because SHA has like much more round than AES. Like I guess like a. Okay, yeah, you are.
So the XORP, this is using fixed key, 2 different versions of fixed key AES?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like 128 input, 128 bit output. Yeah.
Are these CPU cycles per bit of the message, or for what?
Oh, it's CPU cycles per call. Yeah. Yeah, for example, for SHA, we need to do the digest and need to hash and then compute the digest.
How long of a message? How big of a message?
The messages are mostly shorter than a block.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it is slow. If we hash like long messages, it's actually much better.
Okay.
Well, but in the use of MPC, mostly we hash short messages.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for all the questions. Yeah. Okay. So here we mostly focus on OT extension and the garbling. These 2 important building blocks, and see what's happening over here. So the summary is that first, actually many of the implementations are not secure. Some of them are not provably secure. Some of them require some specific implementation of, let's say, base OT and other stuff. And for some others, we can actually show explicit attacks on existing implementations. And then we also find ways to find some good abstractions of the hash functions that can make everything secure. and like show some of the constructions based on fixed key AES modeled as a random permutation, and show like how to construct actually efficient constructions. So our goal is the security. We want to achieve like a secure end-to-end systems for MPC protocols from the protocol to the like a very bottom, the implementation part. But it turns out that because like everything is proven and we have everything can be reduced back to like a fixed key AES, we also achieve like a lot of like huge like performance improvement. That's what I will mention later. Yeah. Because of the time limit, I will mention some of the tags and the part for OT extensions and some hash functions. I will ignore the other part related to gobbling and some circular correlation robust and some other applications beyond gobbling and OT. You can see, you can check them in our paper. But like, yeah, actually I have this slide. So like, let's say if I like, what about just use SHA? I mean, as I showed in the previous table, that actually leads to like a very high performance slowdown. I mean, and also like we might want to, for example, whether we can like construct random oracles from random permutation, let's say random permutations with like a larger domain that we can use. So this is actually a quite a difficult question. I mean, like it's kind of a active open question in the symmetric keys community. The latest one is the XORP construction that I mentioned. That appeared last year in Eurocrypt. Yeah. So let me start with current state of affairs. What's happening right now? Yeah. So again, we have. Now I'm zooming in to the bottom three layer: implementation, primitives, and the protocols over here. And we have oblivious transfer and extension and gobbling. So we know that oblivious transfer extension can be proven secure in the random oracle model, and gobbling can be proven secure in the random permutation model. And then in the implementation, for example, we can instantiate random oracle as SHA and random permutation with fixed key AES. That's like our choice of implementation. Well, over here, like it actually already showed some kind of limitation. Let's say if I propose a new gobbling scheme, what can I do? I need to prove everything from the random permutation model because there's no intermediate concept that I can use in this kind of picture. There are already some kind of attempt to use like a more standard assumptions, standard assumptions for oblivious transfer extension and half gate. For example, like in the original OT extension paper by Yuval et al. Actually, they show that the oblivious transfer, the semi-honest version of oblivious transfer can be is secure, assuming that we have a limited correlation robust hash function. And then the implementation, like there are like a lot of implementations choosing to instantiate that hash function using random permutation or directly assuming that the SHA is a this kind of a pseudo-random object. On the other hand, we also have, say, half gates that actually propose a limited circular correlation robust notion, and then show that this notion can be instantiated from random permutation. So it turns out that this part is problematic in different kinds of ways. So I will not talk about the half gate part, and I will mostly focus on this part, like why this is problematic. And in order to talk about that part, I need to first talk about oblivious transfer and oblivious transfer extension from the very high level. Well, so this is oblivious transfer ideal functionality. Everybody have seen it twice, yesterday and today. So like, so the receiver send a bit X and the sender send 2 messages and receiver get 1 of the messages. And then the OT extension is one of the most amazing things in MPC that allows us to like use a very small amount of OT to get like a lot of OTs. I mean, it's essentially like one of the most important tools in like in practical MPC. How it works is that we first obtain some kind of weak OT extension or like a pseudo-random correlation using Yuval's new term, and then we can bootstrap them to full OT extension where the messages are specified by the sender. So how it works is like sender send, let's say, a bunch of so in the first phase we run this weak OT with some kind of correlation, and then and up to here we don't have like there's like like these A and B's are not really messages; they are just some random correlation. And then when we like when the sender want to correct these messages, sender will just send the hash of some kind of combination XOR with the message, and then it serves like as the purpose of like encrypting the messages using different kind of keys. So in most of the constructions, this weak OT actually has like it's not fully secure in the sense that the adversary can choose. Let's say a malicious receiver can choose the value of BI, and the malicious sender can choose the value of AI. If a sender is malicious, then AI can be chosen by the adversary, and then BI is set according to AI and the correlation. This is very similar to the pseudo correlation generator relaxed notion, the second notion that Yuval mentioned in this morning. So I changed these slides in the morning, by the way. Yeah. It's actually true, like in almost all OT extension protocols, this is how it works. So now it's a problem of how to instantiate that edge function like that we need to use. If we instantiate edge as a random oracle, everything works perfectly. There's like it's like everything just works perfectly, and it's like the proof works very, very easily. And then in the original OT extension paper, they also show that some version of correlation robustness works for some variant of OT extension, not all variant, but some specific variant of OT extension. But in practice, now the problem is how this edge should be implemented in practice. Anybody want to give some conjecture or stuff like that? How edge is actually implemented? Yeah, that's probably the best choice, given that. Well, this is how it is implemented. So there are a bunch of work that actually implemented the edge X of I with using a permutation. We communicated with them, and it turns out that they mentioned that this is a bug. And they are like in space 2, it was implemented as a pi x XOR x. So this construction can be proven to be a one-way function, but there's no more property that was proven for pi x XOR x, assuming that pi is a random permutation. And then so in there are actually people that are actually concerned about security more and use hash function, but they forget to put I inside of the hash function. And even our own EMP actually suffers from the attack in the sense that we actually used some fixed key construction stuff. And well, obviously, like all of them are insecure. Yeah.
Sorry, what does insecure mean? Right, not instantiate a random oracle. Don't think is what you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, H does not instantiate a random oracle. I mean, so let's say I have a weak OT functionality, and then I plug in this H inside of the rest part of the protocol. Then the whole OT extension protocol is not secure, and I can find explicit attacks.
Okay, so you actually have like construction for that.
Yeah, but there's a tricky part. The tricky part is that some of the attack, some of the attack does not work for certain implementation of weak OT, and a certain implementation of the base OT inside of weak OT. So it's so now it really depends on whether you implemented the base OT with some extra property or not. Whether for example, the original OT extension is fine, but if it's attack against some of the proof and some of the implementation, some of the proof, some of the implementation. Yeah.
It's not like an attack as in like I can violate your privacy.
For some implementation, you can. And so next slide actually showed the one that you can actually get the stuff. Yeah. Well, this is like the easiest one. Well, like if it is pi of x and pi is public, If pi is a public random permutation, then it's invertible. Like adversary, everybody can call pi and inverse of pi. Then let's say if one of them is known to the receiver, then you can get the other one easily. Essentially, this is this is obviously insecure. There's it's a period, yeah. Well, but let me give some light on why others are not secure. Let's say if I have a hash function that ignore I, and then the problem is that in this functionality, recall that the adversary can pick bi. If the adversary pick bi such that I use same bi twice, then it will lead to a problem because I is not if I is not included, then the messages can be correlated. I can learn some kind of a correlation between two calls of the OT. So it's actually important to put I inside of the hash function if the adversary can actually arbitrarily choose bi. And then whether the adversary can arbitrarily choose bi or not, it really depends on how the weak OT is implemented. Whether we implement base OT as a pure random uncontrolled OT and stuff. So then it depends on the function on the implementation inside of a weak OT. Yeah. But in the most generic case where the adversary can arbitrarily pick bi, there's an attack in just calling two OT. If weak OT is slightly stronger, you probably need a slightly more OT extension to launch the attack. Well, yeah. So it's bad. It's really bad in some sense. So we want to fix all this kind of stuff without sacrificing the performance. So essentially, what we do is that we proposed and summarized a list of pseudo-random objects that kind of sit in the middle between the protocols and the symmetric key stuff, including some kind of a correlation robustness, tweakable correlation robustness with circularity or without circularity. All of them are really just some pseudo-random object, and they are it's more or less along the line of standard assumptions. They are not really any kind of idealized model. And then for the performance, we actually showed we showed if we have a random permutation, how to instantiate this pseudo-random object using a random permutation. Yeah. Okay. This is probably not important. Oh yeah. So let me start with correlation robustness. So this concept, as far as I know, was also proposed in the OT extension paper by Yuval et al., where they actually proposed a notion which is actually slightly weaker than our notion. So essentially, what we call as correlation robustness is essentially if H is correlation robustness, then F sub k of x implemented in this way should be a pseudo-random function. So the weak version defined in ARSZ allows arbitrary the weak version defined in ARSA does not allow adaptive query to the random function, and the even weaker version defined in Yuval's paper does not has a restricted has a restriction on the distribution of x. X has to be uniform in the IKMP, and in the 15th it does not allow adaptivity. So in our over here our notion we would like the kind of the strongest notion where we allow arbitrary distribution on the input and any kind of adaptivity on the function. And then the tweakable correlation robust is a kind of a very similar concept in the sense that it is tweakable if we also have a tweak. Well, yeah, and even with a tweak, this is a pseudo-random function with the tweak and x. Yeah, and again, it's a strong definition. It allows adaptivity. It allows it does not have restrictions on x or I. So for OT extension, for the semi-honest OT extension, for the OT extension of secure against semi-honest adversaries, we already know that if H is our correlation robustness, then it's a secure protocol. But for malicious case, we actually showed that if we just replace H by a tweakable correlation robust hash function, then we can actually prove security in the malicious setting. So the problem now boils down to how to construct these hash functions efficiently. Well, I mean, of course, we can just, let's say, at that point, we can just assume that, let's say, SHA-256 is a tickable circular correlation robust, tickable correlation robust hash function, or like whatever we want. But that would be, that's an assumption that we can make, of course. So the idea is that we are going to, so essentially, if k is private, it's a pseudo-random function from 2k bit to k bit. 2k bit to k bit. Yeah. So like this random permutation model is actually this like stems from efficiency considerations. Let's say if we have an AES, like one of the way to model AES is to model it as a ideal cipher. But that's like that's a pretty strong assumption, and it also has some kind of okay. Thanks. I thought I have 45 minutes.
Oh, well, we do actually have some extra time. I thought we originally had 30, but...
I see. Sure. Let me not waste time anymore. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
We actually, we've got extra time as long as we're done by half past. So yes, we're okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So like from a very high level, random permutation is also an idealized model. But it's kind of so there are like certain advantages compare random if we compare random permutation and the random oracle. So first, the random permutation is like it's kind of more efficient because like we can, let's say, there are like plausible ways to instantiate. Like in some way that we don't have any attacks against distinguishing random oracle, random permutation against the fixed key AES. The best attack distinguishing AES with ideal cipher works only for 9 rounds of AES, and that even that attack does not apply for the fixed key setting. And also like in many cases when we use this random permutation, we do not really need to program this. So we're actually working in the so-called non-programmable random permutation model. So let me just have the conclusion over here. So we first show that if we have a random permutation, then pi x or XOR x is a secure correlation robust hash function with a concrete bound over there, where n is the size of the permutation. And we also showed that this is in some sense optimal in the sense that any hash function that is instantiated using constant number of permutation, there exists a attack that actually essentially it's kind of a matching bound. So essentially you cannot really do better if we want to construct a correlation robust hash function from random permutation. And then we can also construct a tweakable correlation robust hash function. Over here, we actually need 2 permutation calls per hash function. It looks like we need 3, but pi of x just need to be computed once. Yeah, and the bound is kind of similar with some higher constant. And both this and the previous constructions are both proven using the H coefficient technique known in the symmetric key community. Yeah. So putting it together, so essentially we can construct secure and efficient OT extension protocols in the non-programmable random permutation model. Yeah. And now, so what about the efficiency? So the top part of the table is the same as what I showed before. So the new constructions are at the bottom. So CR refers to correlation robust hash function. So for them, we need 2 more cycles compared to the fixed key AES. And for the circular correlation robust, where the key can also be XORed with the hash function, and then we just need 1 more cycles compared to the correlation robust. And for the tweakable circular correlation robust, we need a little bit more, but this is kind of understandable because we have 2 calls to pi. Yeah. So in summary, there's a gap. There's a huge gap between implementations and what we are being able to prove and what's like and the concrete security that we can show. So how to prevent them? Like generally, we need like a formal verification, like to show that, like kind of end-to-end security from the protocol to the implementation to and all the choices. And actually, like so, it's inspired by this work on the abstractions of the hash functions. We also be able to find like concrete attacks on gobble circuit implementations that actually break the circuit and get that can get the delta in free XOR, for example, using just $200. And then we also construct inspired by this attack, we actually constructed tweakable circular correlation robust hash functions with beyond the birthday bound. That is like much better. And then essentially combining them, we actually get goblin schemes beyond the birthday bound. So stay tuned for this paper. Yeah. Finally, the paper is available in that link. And so in terms of the code, it's actually already implemented in the unbounded attack repo and in the OT extension library that Alex mentioned yesterday and in EMP. And thanks to Sam, Alex, and myself. Yeah, that's it.
We have time for questions.
So you mentioned the XORP gives you a random oracle.
Yes.
And that seemed to be more efficient than the tweakable circular. So could you use XORP in place of the tweakable circular correlation robust function?
So this XORP construction works by if we have two random permutation with k-bit input, k-bit output. If you XOR them, it's a k-bit input, k-bit output random oracle. But for tweakable circular correlation robust, we need 2 k-bit input or k plus log n and a k-bit output. So you cannot directly use them. You need a way to expand domain expansion in some way. Yeah.
Okay, let's thank our speaker again.